Namaste and Namaskar. So, as the years rolled by, slowly and surely, um, Krishna grew to be a boy now of 12 years. Nand had taken a vow that when Krishna became 12 years of age, he would offer a special worship to the family goddess Ambika. Along with neighbors and friends, Nand went to the temple of the goddess with gifts of milk, curd, butter, and milk sweets. They were accompanied by men sounding drums and blowing trumpets. At the temple, Nand performed the sacred ritual in all its beauty. Then he fed the Mahatmas. By the time the worship and prayers were over, it had become dark. So they decided to spend the night in the temple courtyard. Nand and his followers lay down to rest. The night had advanced. The fires had sunk to smoldering embers. Suddenly, the party was woken up by a disturbed shout from Nand. They relit their torches and saw that his foot was in the mouth of an unimaginably huge python. They beat the snake with sticks and thrust burning faggots into his body, but the snake would not leave its hold. It held even more firmly and would just not let go. Nand shouted to Krishna for help. Krishna rushed to his father's rescue at once. He touched the back of the snake with his foot. At once the ugly python changed into a handsome and shining Vidyadhar, who bowed low before Krishna with folded hands. Krishna asked him who he was. He replied, "My name is Sudarshan. I am a celestial magician. I had become very proud of my skill and beauty. One day I had gone to the forest in my chariot. There the rishi Angira was sitting in deep meditation. I flew over him in my chariot 100 times. Aroused from his meditation, he cursed me into being a python, saying that I would be released from it by the grace of Krishna. That is why I came and seized Nand's foot. Please forgive me." With deep prostration, he mounted his chariot and sped to Suralok. Once it so happened that the brothers, Krishna and Balaram, were in the forest with the gopis. The brothers sang and played their flutes, and the gopis listened in rapt attention. Just then there came upon a yaksha, a vile attendant of Kuber, the god of wealth. His name was Shankachuda. He seized the unsuspecting gopis and drove them northwards. The girls wept and screamed for help. Krishna and Balram uprooted a sal tree each and gave chase to the yaksha. Frightened of the brothers, Shankachuda dropped the gopis and fled as fast as he could. "Brother, you look after them," cried Krishna, and then he sped after the fleeing yaksha. Soon Shankachuda was killed by a blow of Krishna's fist. In his crest jewel, a precious gem rolled down. Krishna picked it up and presented it lovingly to Balaram. From then onwards, as of before, the gopis were constantly singing the glories of Krishna, their one savior, and with their minds fixed in an unbroken stream of thought on the blue boy of Vrindavan, they cheerfully went about their daily tasks and duties. Now, Krishna is growing. So once again, Narad enters into the scene. Now the time for Kansa's death was fast approaching. Narad, the divine sage, who ever acts as the instrument to carry out Lord's wish, went to Kansa and said, "Listen, O Kans, you have been tricked. Devki's eighth son still lives in the house of Nand in Braj. The female child that you sought to kill was Yashoda's baby. The two were exchanged on the night of Krishna's birth. Krishna and his brother Balram have killed all the asurs you sent to kill them." Kans was terribly agitated and angered by this news. He drew out his sword and rushed to kill Vasudev. But Narad stopped him and explained that Vasudev was quite innocent. Nevertheless, Kans and Devki and her husband had Devki and her husband put into chains and thrown into the darkest dungeons. Narad departed and Kansa sent for his ministers and counselors. To them he said, Narad has just told me that brothers Ram and Krishna, who will be the cause of my death, are still alive. I will send for them both and have them killed in a wrestling match. Prepare the playgrounds. The elephant Kuvalayapida will be placed at the entrance. He will kill my enemies. Arrange for a Dhanur Yagya on the 14th day of the lunar month. Let us propitiate Shiva for our victory. Keep the elephant keepers and wrestlers ready. Thus he gave them minute instructions for preparations. Kans sent for Akrur, one of the chiefs of Yadav clan. Akrur, my dear friend, you are trusted wherever you go. Please go to Vraj, take this chariot with you. Bring back the two sons of Vasudev. Tell them that they have been invited by me to witness the Dhanur Yagya and to see the sights of the town. My powerful elephant will kill the brothers, and if they by any chance escape him, my wrestlers will quickly do away with them. Then I will have Vasudev, my father Ugrasen, and his brother Devak, and all the Vrishinis, Bhojas, and Dashharhas, all of them killed. The earth will be rid of all my foes. I will have on my side such stalwart asurs such as Jarasandh, Samavar, Narak, and Bana. With their help, I will rule this entire world. Hurry now with my message to Vraj. My wonderful plan cannot but succeed. The wise Akrur replied, Your plan is indeed wonderful, O Kans, but one must keep a balanced mind in success and in failure. Many times, lofty plans are frustrated by unforeseen obstacles, causing us much grief as their success would have caused us joy. Nevertheless, I will carry out your bill. So now, Akrurji heads over to Vraj. He was indeed very pleased that he had been chosen to convey the message to Vraj. His joy knew no bounds at the thought that at last he would see the lotus feet of the Lord. He felt sure that despite the message he was carrying, the Lord would know of his deep devotion to him and therefore would forgive him of all his sins. All along the way to Vraj, his mind was absorbed in Krishna, and he rehearsed in his mind how he would fall at his feet when he met him, how he would raise him and embrace him, etc. Akrur reached Vraj just as the sun was setting. Krishna and Balaram, refreshed after a bath, were strolling in the courtyard where the cows were being milked. There was a lovely fragrance of fresh sandal paste about them, and though they wore neat, clean clothes of blue and yellow, gems sparkled at their throats and their chests were adorned with garlands and wild flowers. In great excitement at beholding the beautiful shining face of the Lord, Akrurji jumped down from his chariot. He was overwhelmed with the joy. The tears rolled freely down his cheeks, and he fell at the feet of Krishna and prostrated before him. His voice was choked with emotion, which prevented him from saying who he was, where he had come from, and for what purpose. Gently, Krishna raised him to his feet and embraced him warmly. Balarama too embraced him and greeted him affectionately. Then the brothers took him inside. They made him comfortable, they washed his tired feet and massaged them and fed him a delicious meal. Then Nand and Akrurji exchanged greetings. While they were talking, Akrurji told them how Narad had come to Kans and revealed to him the secret of Krishna's birth. He also told them the real reason why he had been sent to Vraj. At this, Krishna and Balram laughed heartily. Nand ordered at once that the carriages and presents be got ready for the trip to Mathura. He had it proclaimed throughout Vraj that early next morning they would proceed to Mathura to witness the great Dhanur Yagya. Next morning, as the sun crept over the horizon, Akrur offered his prayers. The boys climbed onto his carriage. Slowly, the carriages and carts started moving towards Mathura. Akrurji's chariot was followed by the chariots of Nanda and the other gops. Behind them came the carts loaded with gifts of milk, curd, and butter for Kans. But what about the gopis? Who can describe the sorrow they felt at the separation from their Lord? Their hearts were numb and heavy with grief. They followed the carriages with heart-rending pleas. They wept and ran behind the chariots for a long distance. They bade the brothers farewell and for a long time watched after the carriages even after they had disappeared from the sight. They felt limp and forlorn, like creepers whose support had been taken away. Back in Vraj, the gopis went about their usual work, but their minds were fixed on Krishna. When they were together, they spoke of his deeds and glories and sang songs in his praise. When they were alone, they meditated deeply upon the divine nature of the Lord. ભક્ત આ ભક્તની નિશાની છે. Now, ભગવાન પહોંચી ગયા મથુરા. નમસ્તે વાસુદેવાય સર્વભૂતક્ષયાય સર્વભૂતક્ષયાય ચમ ऋषिकेश नमस्तुभ्यं प्रपन्न पाहि मां प्रभु. O Vasudev, you are the one in whom all beings merge back in the end. I salute you. O Rishikesh, I bow down to you in devotion. Hey Prabhu, O Lord, protect me. I have surrendered to you. Give me the refuge. It was noon and the sun was right overhead. Akrurji stopped the chariot on the bank of Mandakini. The brothers refreshed themselves in the waters of the river and came back to the chariot. Akrur then requested their permission to go and bathe in the river and to perform his midday worship with the chanting of the Gayatri mantra. As he was thus engaged in worship, he saw in the water Krishna and Balram. He was astounded. Why, only moments ago he had left them in the chariot, so he rushed back, but beheld Balram and Krishna as he had left them some time back, talking to each other. Speechless with wonder and amazement, he plunged into the river again, and lo and behold, there he saw the thousand-headed serpent king, Shesh, into the river, wearing 1,000 crowns stretched majestically in the water. On him lay Lord Vishnu, clad in yellow pitambarma, resplendent with 4 arms, Shankha Chakra Gadadini. Around him, worshipping him in the silent adoration, stood the 4 Kumars, the Siddha, the Gandharvas, Rishis, the Prajapatis, and devotees like Prahlad and Narad, and number of gods and goddesses. Akrurji was awed by this glorious vision of Lord. He folded his hands and prostrated in great devotion. Then, as a play is withdrawn from the stage, Krishna withdrew his form. Still full of the bliss of the vision, Akrurji went back to the chariot. Krishna was indeed amused when he saw the change in Akrurji's face. He said, "Tell us, uncle, what wonders have you seen in the water, sky, or earth that you look so transformed?" And Akrurji replied, "All the wonders in the water, sky, and earth are only yours. Having seen you, I have indeed seen all the wonders of the world." Akrurji then drove fast his chariot so that by sundown they had reached the outskirts of Mathura. Humbly he requested them to be his guests in Mathura and offered praise to the Lord. Deva Deva Jagannatha Punya Shravana Kirtana Yaduttama Shloka Narayana Namostute. O Lord of Lords, the sole King of the universe, one who bestows merits on those who listen to and sing glories of him, Krishna, best among the Yadavs, O Narayan, I bow down. Krishna and Balram promised to come to his house once Kansa had been killed. Sorrowfully, Akrurji left them and went to inform Kansa that the boys had arrived in the city. Now, Mathura is a beautiful city. The roads were broad and neat. The city was fortified and there was a moat running all around it. There were huge granaries where all the grain was stored. There were beautiful parks and gardens, marketplaces, business houses, and rest houses. There were public shelter for the weary travelers, and the mansions were fine and huge. Krishna and Balram were utterly delighted with everything they saw. They walked about in the streets. By this time, everybody had come to know that Krishna and Balram had arrived. The women and children rushed to their windows and balconies and craned their necks to catch a glimpse of the brothers. They showered flowers on them and felt blessed when they looked up and smiled at them. Every now and then, the people would step into the streets sprinkled with water and worship Ram and Krishna with incense and lamps, rice and curds, flowers and fruits. A grand welcome. As they went along, they passed a washerman's shop. Krishna requested him to give them the best of the fine clothes he had and promised him great blessings in return. The washerman, however, worked for Kansa and was arrogant. He said, "What? Do you get such fine clothes to wear in the mountains and forests where you roam? Be off, foolish boys, before the king's officers come and arrest you. Never make such demands again." Lightly, Krishna touched his head with his fingertips. Instantly, the washerman's head was separated from his body. The servants saw this and ran here and there in great confusion. Krishna and Balram chose the finest clothes for themselves and distributed the rest among the gopis. Then they came across a weaver who lovingly dressed the boys with the best clothes he had, and which made their complexions glow even more. Krishna blessed him for his devotion. The brothers now entered the house of a garland maker called Sudama. Sudama worshipped them with betel leaves, garlands, and flowers of all colors and fragrances. He prayed to the Lord for constant devotion and love for all his creatures. Krishna blessed him and conferred on him many boons and blessings. Some time later, a young girl passed their way carrying a pot of fragrant sandal paste. She had a beautiful face which shone with kindness, but she had a hunchback. Krishna joked with her and said, "Tell me truly whom you carry this paste for. If you anoint us with it, you will be suitably rewarded." The maid looked at their faces and answered pleasantly, "My name is Trivakra, one of the three bends. I am a maid servant. Every day I prepare this paste for Kans, who likes it very much." Then, with great love and devotion, she gave them the paste to smear it on their neck and chest. As a reward, Krishna drew close to her and pressed her feet with his toes. He placed two of his fingers under her chin and lifted it. The hunchback straightened into a shapely young woman of great charm and beauty. In gratitude, she invited Krishna to come into her house. Krishna said, "I will certainly come when my work is over." Krishna and Balram visited all the places of interest in Mathura till they arrived at the sacrificial hall, Yagyashalama, where the Dhanush, huge and heavy and shining with the splendor of many precious gems, was kept on exhibition. People came and gazed at it with awe and reverence and placed by its side the many gifts and presents they had brought with them. The bow was heavily guarded by fierce-looking armed men. Krishna seized the Dhanush and before they could stop him, drew its string to his ear till it snapped into two. The snapping sounded like a terrific thunderclap and reached the ears of Kansa. It filled him with great fear and dread. The attendants of the Dhanush rushed on Krishna and Balram, bows and arrows in readiness. With nothing else in hand but one half of the bow each, the brothers killed the guards and the soldiers who sought to kill them. Then, with a casual stride, they walked out to complete their sightseeing, and at nightfall they reached their camp on the outskirts of the city. Now comes the death of Kansa. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kansacharu Namardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatguru. Many of you may know this. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsacharu Namardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Harahe Paramatmane Pranatakleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namah. Kans spent a sleepless night. He was extremely angry because his bow had been wrecked, because so many of his guards and soldiers had been killed, because his own special sandal paste had been given to the boys from Braj. All through the night he was disturbed by nightmares of death, torture, and dishonor. When he looked into the mirror, he saw his body without a head. When he looked at the sky, he saw every star double. His shadow appeared to be full of holes when he walked. Oh my goodness. When he walked, he left no footprints on the earth. In the midst of all these evil omens, he tried to snatch some sleep. Then he dreamed that he was riding a donkey, that he had swallowed poison, and then he was embraced by a dead relative, or that he was lying naked, his body smeared with oil, his nerves were on edge. He knew no rest or peace. He felt as though he was on brink of madness. At last the sun rose over the eastern horizon. It was the day of the festival when the wrestling match was to take place. The vast arena of the amphitheater was tastefully decorated with flowers, garlands, and buntings. Spectators, spectators had started gathering from early morning in order to get seats at vantage points. The galleries were filled with princes and chiefs, ministers and traders, businessmen and priests. The wrestlers Ganura, Mushtika, Kut, Sala, and Tosal, renowned the world over for their strength, prowess, and skill in wrestling, had gathered and were waiting for the matches to begin. At last Kans arrived and took his seat on a raised platform. The trumpets blared forth, the drums sounded, and the people cheered their king. This lifted the spirit of the dejected king a little. Nanda and the gopis made their gifts and were given special seats to watch the matches. After the morning bath, Krishna and Balram strolled unhurriedly towards the amphitheater. The very entrance they were obstructed by the mighty elephant Kuvalayapida. Kuvalayapida. Krishna asked the Mahavat to remove the elephant from their path. Instead, he urged the mighty beast to trample upon the two boys. The elephant moved forward and made to coil its trunk around Krishna. Krishna, however, slipped between the legs of the maddened beast and with a jump caught its tail with both hands. He pulled it for 25 bow lengths, that's like 50 yards, then whirled it round and round, the Mahavat and all, and made it quite dizzy. Then he leapt forward and seized the animal's trunk. It fell down with a mighty thud. Krishna ripped out the elephant's tusk and with one blow killed both the animal and its Mahavat. Perspiring and armed with the bleeding tusks, the brothers entered the arena. The people were at once attracted by the divine glow on their faces. They were thrilled beyond measure that the elephant had been killed. Among themselves, they started talking about the deeds and glories of Balaram and Krishna. Kansa, too, awed by their feat, looked helplessly upon their magnificence and trembled violently within. At last, the trumpet sounded and the signal was given for the games to start. Chanura, the chief wrestler, approached Krishna and said with utmost courtesy, O Krishna and Balaram, your fame as renowned wrestlers has reached the ears of our king, the great Kansa. Therefore, you have been invited to this wrestling match. We who are the subjects of the king have to do his bidding, and so we request you to match your wrestling skills with ours. Now, Krishna loved this sport, one which he had indulged in so often with the goats when they were out in the forest with their cows. But he answered, We who live in the forest are also the subjects of the king of Bhoj. We too must do his bidding, but we will wrestle with our equals, that there may be no sense of injustice or foul play. And he replied with great cunning, Neither you nor your brother are young in experience. You killed an elephant just now, which had the strength of 1,000 elephants, as though you were at play. You should not therefore hesitate to wrestle with us. Measure your strength with mine and let Balaram tackle Mushtika. The brothers accepted the challenge. Soon they were locked in fight with the two mighty wrestlers. People grew afraid to watch the supple young bodies of the boys in the grips of the strong muscled bodies of the seasoned wrestlers, glistening with oil and sweat. They protested that the fight was unequal and cried out to put a stop to it. Krishna now thought that he had dallied enough. He started hitting his opponent hard with his hands, feet, and knees. Chanura could not take the deadly blows and fainted a number of times. With a last spurt, he rose and struck Krishna on the chest with the double force of both fists. Krishna received the blow as an elephant receives a flower garland. Then he caught Shanur by the arms and whirling him round and round and round, dashed him to the ground with such immense force that he did not even have the opportunity to draw his last breath. His body, mangled, lay in the dust motionless in death. Similarly, Balaram killed Mushtika, and he too lay still with streams of blood pouring forth from his mouth. Then he killed Kut with his fist, and Krishna killed Sal with merely a kick of his foot. All the other wrestlers fled from the arena in great terror. Krishna and Balaram danced joyfully as they used to in Vrindavan. They were soon joined by the gop with their tinkling bells making sweet dance music. The trumpets sounded, the crowds rose from their seats saying, "Well done, bravo, bravo." Consumed and seethed with rage, his eyes were red with anger and his body trembled violently with the force of uncontrolled emotions. He ordered the trumpets to be silent and shouted, "Drive these two boys out of Mathura. Take away all the possessions of these wild gopes. Seize this Nand and put him in chains. Kill the wicked Vasudev and my father Ugrasen. Kill! Kill!" But before he could even finish giving his orders, Krishna jumped onto his platform. Kans immediately drew forth his sword, but Krishna caught hold of Kans by his hair, from which the royal crown had tumbled down. He swung him around and threw him down into the arena, still and quite dead. Then he dragged the tyrant all around the arena so that everybody could see him. But in spite of his disgraceful end, Kans was so rewarded in his last moment with a blissful vision of the Lord in all his divine splendor. For Kans, although in a negative way, with constant fear and dread in his heart, had never spent a single moment without thinking about him. See, જાણવાનું અને શીખવાનું આ જ છે કે ભગવાન તો બધાનું ભલું કરવા જ બેઠા છે. અને ભલે ને ખરાબ રીતે ભગવાનનું નામ લીધું, નેગેટિવ રીતે, પણ એક મોમેન્ટ જેમ ગોપીઓ હતી, કામ કરતા એક એમની જ વાતો ને એમની જ ગ્લોરીની વાર્તાઓ, અને જ્યારે શાંત હોય ત્યારે એના જ નામ પર મેડિટેશન. કંસે પણ આખો જીવન એનું નારાયણ કૃષ્ણનું નામનું જ રટણ કરે રાખેલું હતું. સો કેવી રીતે કર્મનું ફળ મળે છે એ સમજવાનું છે. Kansa's 8 brothers felt the insult done to their brother. They attacked Krishna and Balaram to avenge Kansa's death. But they too were soon overpowered and killed. Kansa's many wives were inconsolable with grief, but Krishna comforted them and gave them solace. Krishna and Balaram then hastened to Vasudeva and Devaki and released them from their iron chains and fetters. They prostrated before them and touched their feet in salutation. Krishna also released Ugrasen, who was languishing in a dungeon where he had been thrown by his own son Kansa in his impatience to get his throne. Vasudeva and Devaki embraced their sons from whom they had been so long separated with great love and tenderness. They kissed them again and again and shed tears of joy. Krishna and Balaram placed the released Ugrasen on the throne. Krishna called back the Yadavs, the Vrishnis, Madhus, and Dasharas, who had fled from Mathura in terror of Kansa, and restored to them their rightful properties and homes. The citizens of Mathura, now released from the tyranny of Kansa's reign, lived happily in peace and prosperity. Well, Krishna and Balaram addressed Nanda respectfully and said, "Dear father, you and Mother Yashoda shall ever be our real parents, because it was you who looked after us when we were in great danger as infants. We request you now to return to Braj and comfort our dear ones there. We will soon follow you." Nanda and Gops bade them goodbye and returned to Braj with heavy hearts. Vasudeva now felt it was time for Krishna and Balaram to be initiated into Brahmacharya, for them to be invested with the sacred thread, the Janoi, and to learn the scriptures from a learned guru. ભગવાનને પણ ગુરુ પાસે જવું પડે છે. After the Upanayan Sanskar, the boys were taken to their teacher, Rishi Sandipani. They were required to live in the ashram of their guru in strict continence and service to the teacher during the entire period of their studies. The boys were diligent and quick to learn. Under the guidance of Guru Sandipani, they had mastered the Vedas and the Vedanganas, phonetics, grammar, astronomy, logic, and the different systems of philosophy and the economic sciences, all within the span of 64 days. ભગવાનને શીખવું થોડી પડે એમને તો આવડે છે. Then they approached their guru and asked him to name his Guru Dakshina. The teacher consulted his wife. The extraordinary intelligence of the brothers and stories of their deeds left no doubt as to their divinity. Rishi Sandipani said, "We desire no material fees, dear children, but our son was drowned in the sea at Prabhas. We request you to restore him to us." Balaram and Krishna set out for the seashore. The sea brought forth many precious gifts for them and honored and welcomed them. But on being questioned, it denied having swallowed the Rishi's son. Then they went to Yam, the lord of death, and demanded the restoration of Guru's son. The Guru and the Guru Patni were overjoyed to receive their lost son back. Sandipani bade them farewell with the following blessing: "Go, my children, to your homes. You have given me the most precious Guru Dakshina. May your glory shine wherever you go. May you purify the whole world." 64 days. After completing his studies with Rishi Sandipani, Krishna went back to his parents in Mathura, but he still had not forgotten his friends in Braj, nor the happy days he had spent in their company. So one day he called to him a dear friend of whose name was Uddhav. He asked him to carry a message of love from him to the people of Braj. Uddhav was only too pleased to do the Lord's bidding. Krishna himself did not go to Vrindavan because when an avatar is born, it is to fulfill certain purposes in life, and the Lord's mission was yet to start. What was the mission? Well, you may have guessed it, but now let's move towards it. In Mathura, Krishna visited the hunchback girl who was now a beautiful young lady according to his promise. Then with Balaram and Uddhav he visited the house of Akrur. Akrur washed the feet of Krishna and received him with great devotion. "Good people like you are worthy of adoration and worship, uncle," said Krishna. "Their very presence purifies the world. Please then proceed to Hastinapur and inquire after the welfare of our cousins the Pandavas. They are yet young but have lost their father. They are now living with their uncle Dhritarashtra, but the blind king is partial to his wicked sons. So please inquire whether the Pandavas and their mother Kunti are happy or not. Then we will see if we can help them." So Akrurji set out on his mission to Hastinapur. There he met King Dhritarashtra and members of the court and the household, the grandsire Bhishma, the wise minister Vidur, the great teacher of archery Drona, his son Ashwathama, the eldest of Kauravas Duryodhan, and Karna, all of the 5 Pandavas and their mothers Kunti. Akrurji stayed for some days in Hastinapur. During that time he learned that the sons of Dhritarashtra were very jealous of their cousins who were more popular with the people because of their intelligence, bravery, skill in the arts and sciences, and their great modesty. Many times Dhritarashtra's sons, the wicked Kauravas, tried to do away with the Pandavas, but invariably the plans failed. When the time for Akrur's departure drew near, he requested the old king to be impartial in the treatment of his fatherless nephews. But Dhritarashtra confessed that he was much too attached to his sons for his decisions to be impartial. Akrur, saddened by what he had seen and heard, hastened back to Mathura and gave in detail his report to Krishna. Jarasandh. Jarasandh was the king of Magad. He was the father-in-law of Kans, since 2 of his daughters were married to him. When Kans was killed, his wives became widows and sorrowfully returned to their father's house. Jarasandh was terribly angry and indeed swore to take revenge. He collected an army of 23 Akshaunis, Each Akshauhini Sena army consists of 21,870 chariots, just as many elephants, 65,610 horses, and 1,09,350 foot soldiers. 23 such. There were 23 lakh, more than 23 lakh foot soldiers. He marched at the head of his huge army, determined to wipe out the Yadav race. Krishna thought for a moment what he should do. Then he decided that he would destroy Jarasandha's army but would spare his life, for the purpose of an incarnation is to remove the evil and the wicked from the face of the earth. And Krishna thought that if he spared the life of Jarasandha, he would gather his adharmic forces again and again, and that would give the Lord a chance to do away with as many wicked people as possible. As Krishna was thinking, there arrived before him two celestial driven by heavenly charioteers. It was fully fitted for the requirements of warfare. The weapons were special and indestructible. Balaram and Krishna led a small army of soldiers out of the city gate and rode out in their celestial chariots. They blew their shankh and challenged the enemy forces. Jarasandha said, "While Krishna, killer of your own uncle, I shall not fight you, but I'll certainly match my skill and courage with Balaram if he's ready to fight me." Krishna said, "A truly brave man never boasts. You are still full of sorrow over your son in law's death, so I will not take notice of your words." Jarasandha's army now surrounded Krishna's army on all sides like the sun, and its rays are surrounded by the threatening dark black storm clouds. Women watched from their balconies and housetops. Soon they lost sight of the brothers and their flags in the midst of the enemy numbers. They trembled with fear at the thought of what would be the fate of Krishna and Balaram against the enemy hordes. Krishna twanged his mighty bow, Saranga, and let go of his arrows with such speed and in such great numbers that they destroyed the enemy in thousands at a time. Men, horses, and elephants were scorched by the mighty power. The arrows followed one after another so swiftly that they resembled a giant wheel of fire. Hands were cut off, heads rolled down, legs were severed, and bits of shattered weapons and chariots flew into the air. The battlefield was covered by innumerable streams of blood. Balram wielded his celestial mace and completed the destruction of Jarasandha's army. Then he attacked Jarasandha, who had by now lost all his horses, elephants, men, and chariots. He was about to bind him with ropes when Krishna stopped him. Jarasandha was set free. So humbled was he that he decided to renounce the world and become an ascetic. But some other kings who were his friends consoled him and with worldly wisdom and dissuaded him from doing so. So he returned to Magad and collected another 23 Akshaunis and marched to Mathura. 17 times was Jarasandha defeated by Krishna, and every time he lost an entire army. Yet Jarasandha prepared to lead another 23 Akshauhini Sena for the 18th attempt. At this time, Mathura's might was challenged by a brave hero called Kalyavan. He was followed by an army of 30 Akshaunis of Mlecha, the barbarians. Krishna and Balaram discussed the situation. Krishna said, "In a day or two, Jarasandha will be upon us with his forces. If at that time we are engaged in fighting the Yavana, Jarasandha will capture the city and kill or make prisoners of the citizens. What we must do is build an inaccessible fortress and remove all of our people and cattle there. Then by the time we are through with Kal Yavana, we will be ready to fight Jarasandha." This was no sooner said than done. A magnificent fortress, 96 miles long, rose from the bottom of the sea in the west. Within was a town fashioned with exquisite skill and workmanship. There were buildings with golden towers, and walls and roofs were decorated with sparkling gems. There were the broad roads and lovely gardens and groves with the rarest and most beautiful plants and trees ever seen. Indra presented Krishna with the famous hall for assembly called Sudharma and the Parijat tree whose shade had the unique power of removing hunger, thirst, and fatigue. Varun, the water god, presented him with the fleetest of horses, and Kuber presented him with 8 kinds of wealth, of which he was the presiding deity. Then, with his yogic powers, Krishna transferred the entire population of Mathura to the new town, which was called Dwarka. પેલું બહુ જ હમણાં ફેમસ થયું છે ને, દ્વારિકાનો નાથ મારો રાજા રન છોડ છે એને મને માયા લગાડી રે. So then Krishna and Balram emerged from the city gates to fight the Yavan. Now Krishna revealed to Kal Yavan his four-armed form, which he immediately recognized because of the description that Narad has previously given him. Seeing that the Lord was unarmed and on foot, the Yavan also dismounted from his chariot and discarded his weapons. As he approached the Lord, Krishna suddenly turned around and walked away rapidly. Yavan could not keep pace, although the Lord seemed just within reach. After some time, Krishna entered a mountain cave and was closely followed by Kal Yavan. However, when the Yavan went into the cave, he found no trace of Krishna. On the floor, he saw a man who seemed to be sleeping. He thought it was Krishna pretending to be unconscious. With a rude kick, he tried to wake him. The sleeping man woke, and the moment he looked up, Yavan was reduced to ashes. Balina Basmati. The name of the sleeping man was Muchkund, the descendant of Ikshvaku. He was a wise and noble king. Once Indra had become afraid of the Asuras and had asked the Muchkund to keep guard over the Devs. This the pious king did with such sincere vigilance that the Devs asked him to demand any boon save that of liberation, which none other than the Lord could give. Muchkund, tired after his long vigil, asked for the boon of continuous and uninterrupted sleep. This the Devas granted him, accompanied by the curse that whosoever woke him up would immediately be reduced to ashes. Thus, Muchkund retired to the mountain cave and promptly went to sleep till he was rudely awakened by Kalya. Krishna now revealed himself to Muchkund, dazzling with youthful beauty. Muchkund was awed by the divine vision. He felt an upsurge of love for the resplendent being and said, "Who are you who have entered this forest cave, dazzling it with such overpowering glory? Are you the sun god or the moon god or the lord of all Devs, Indra? I feel you could be none other than the blessed Vishnu himself, for who else can equal the glory and the beauty of your being?" Krishna said, "Dear friend, my name and births have been infinite. This time I have been born as the son of Vasudev in the Yadav race. Since you are my devotee, I am bound to you by love. Ask what boon you will." Muchkund prayed to the Lord, "I was bewildered by your Maya for many lives, O Lord, but now that I have seen you, I desire nothing but infinite love for you." The blessed Lord said, "Muchkund, your mind is now truly pure. I grant that wherever you go, your mind will remain ever fixed upon me. With constant meditation and practice of penances, you will attain to my being." Muchkund then retired to Badrikashram between the peaks of Nara and Narayan in the Himalayas and practiced austerities there. Krishna returned to Mathura and defeated the Yavan's Mlecha troops. Now Krishna and Balram were carrying the booty to Dwarka when they were attacked by Jarasandha. The brothers pretended to flee. They climbed a mountain and safely escaped to Dwarka. Jarasandha pursued them. Nowhere on the mountain could he find them, so he set fire to the whole mountain. Smug and satisfied that he had at last managed to outwit the brothers, he returned to Magad. In due course, Balaram was married to a beautiful and virtuous princess called Revati. Krishna married Rukmini, the princess of Vidarbha. This is how it came about. The king of Vidarbha was Bhishmaka. He had 5 sons and 1 daughter. The eldest son was called Rukmi. He hated Krishna and resolved to give his lovely sister in marriage to Shishupal, the prince of Chedi, who hated Krishna even more. But the king and all the other members of the royal court wanted Rukmani to marry Krishna. Rukmani too had set her heart on marrying Krishna and was very disturbed to know that Rukmi would never let her do so. But she did not despair. She called to her a trusted Brahmin called Sunanda, and with a message sent him to the Lord of her heart. Sunanda was very well received by Krishna. After offering him rest and refreshment, Krishna asked him the purpose of his visit. Sunanda told Krishna everything that had happened in Vidarbha and said, I carry for you a message from the princess Rukmani. She has asked me to say that she has set her heart on you and that she would rather die than marry anybody else. She has implored you to save her from the jackal Shishupal who dares to touch the royal share of the lion. The royal princess would have you to come to Kundinapura during the days of the marriage festivities and carry her off in the Rakshas form of marriage. According to the Rakshas system of marriage, rival parties contest for the hand of the bride. She becomes the prize of the victorious party. On that day, she will be taken out to the Ambika temple for worship. She has vowed to lay down her life by fasting if she does not see you by then. Now, Lord, it is all up to you as to what should be done. Saying this, Sunanda became silent. Krishna was the incarnation of Lord Vishnu and Rukmani was the incarnation of his divine consort Lakshmi. So it was but natural that they should be life partners on earth too. Krishna laughed heartily when he heard the message of Sunand and said, I too am determined to marry Rukmani and am well aware that it is Rukmani who has caused all this trouble. Tell the princess to take heart. I shall not fail her. Then Krishna summoned his celestial chariot drawn by the four celestial horses and driven by his charioteer Daruk. In one night he reached Kundinapur. Kundinapur was a hub of activity. The entire city was swept clean and streets were sprinkled with water. Garlands of flowers, colored buntings fluttered and gave it a festive air. Brahmins continuously chanted for the Rik, Sam, and Yajurved. They invoked blessings upon the bride and made offerings and oblations to propitiate the unfavorable planets. Shishupal's father, King Damaghosh of Achedi, also performed similar rites along with his entire army came to Kundinapur. He brought Salva, Jarasandh, Dantavakra, Vidurath, Poundrak, and all his other friends along who were the enemies of Krishna. The bride's father gave them palatial accommodation. Damaghosh brought this vast retinue because he expected Krishna to cause trouble during the marriage festivities. Balaram did not like the idea that Krishna had gone alone, so he too went to Kundinapur with the Yadav army. In the royal palace, Rukmani was getting extremely anxious as there was no sign yet of either Krishna or the messenger she had sent. It was now the eve of her wedding day, and as the hours sped by, she became more and more agitated. She tried hard to strengthen her heart and to restrain her tears. She could not imagine what had happened that Sunanda had not yet come. But in the midst of her sorrow and agitation, she noticed that her left thigh, arm, and eyelid throbbed auspiciously. This gave her a faint glimmer of hope. Just then Sunand arrived and gave her a detailed account of what had happened at Dwarka. He told her that Lord was already in the city. Rukmani, in deep gratitude, bowed low before the good Brahmin. Bhishmaka learnt that Krishna and Balram had arrived in the city. With happiness and love, he hastened to welcome them. He presented them with many gifts and received them as highly respected and honored guests. Soon the bridal procession started for the temple of goddess Ambika. Rukmani, decked in her bridal finery, attended upon by all her men in waiting, stepped into her chariot, which had also been decorated elaborately with gold and gems. The chariot slowly made its way to the temple. The bride, along with her mother and some other elderly ladies of the palace, entered the shrine to offer worship. Trumpets blared forth, and the drums sounded, and the thousands of dancing girls tapped their feet rhythmically. and the silvery tinkling of their anklets resounded musically. Inside, Rukmini prayed hard and implored the mother to grant her request and make Krishna her husband. The worship over, the bride emerged from the temple and slowly made her way back to the chariot. She looked indeed so beautiful that the princes who had come from far off lands to attend the wedding climbed down from their own vehicles to take a closer look at her. She trembled slightly and prayed that Krishna would appear, while people caught their breath when they beheld her slight, shapely form and her lovely face framed by dark black hair. Now Rukmani walked even more slowly and played for time. Even now and then she peeped from the corner of her eyes to see if she could glimpse get a glimpse if she could catch a glimpse of her lord. Then, as she was about to enter her chariot, Krishna stepped forward and, holding her by the waist, drew her into his own chariot. He seated her on the cushions by his side, and before the astounded eyes of Shishupal, Jarasandha, and others, he drove away towards Dwarka. Balaram and the Yadavs followed them. By now, Jarasandha and other kings had regained their senses. As soon as they were able, they gave chase to Krishna and Balaram. The Yadavs used some special weapons and defeated the combined forces of the enemy. But Rukmi was not one to give up and accept defeat so easily. He vowed that he would not return till he had killed Krishna and recaptured his sister. Krishna, however, soon had Rukmi in his power and was about to cut off his head. But Rukmani fell at his feet and begged him to spare her brother's life. Krishna tied Rukmi with his own scarf and shaved off part of his head and chin. Disgraced as he was, Rukmi did not return to Kundinapur but built a new city for himself where he lived for the rest of his life. Triumphantly, Krishna carried his bride to Dwarka, and there, with due pomp and ceremony, amid great rejoicing in the city, he married her. Good. So આના પછી સમયંતક મણિની વાત આવશે, જ્યાં જામવન અને જામવંતીની વાર્તા આવશે. એ પછી નરકાસુરની વાત આવશે. સો કૃષ્ણના અલગ અલગ એમની લીલા ભાગવતમાં ચાલ્યા કરશે. સો ધ નેક્સ્ટ ટાઈમ આપણે સમયંતક મણિ, જામવંત અને સત્યભામા અને જામવંતીની વાત કરીશું, નરકાસુરની વાત કરીશું. Till then, namaste and namaskar.